Hello, class. How are you? Hope you all are doing well and are staying healthy at home. Just wanted to say thank you again for the awesome home programs that you all submitted last week. Our MDC parents are super excited to continue to see you, even though remotely, and continue to get ways to practice their motor skills. So I'm super excited to see tonight's all four of your skills home program. So don't forget to submit that on Blackboard. It's under assignments and it should be for all of their skills. You can either do four separate videos or one video containing a home program activity for each of their skills with the verbal cues and directions on what you want them to complete for that program. Tonight, we're going to be talking about goals and objectives, which is an assignment that you have coming up. And I'm going to go through a PowerPoint and kind of discuss with you how to go ahead and put your goal and objective together. And then I'm going to show you a resource that's currently on Blackboard, and then also the template that you're going to use for your assignment. And after watching this lecture, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. So let's get started with the PowerPoint. All right, here we go. Round 2 of our lecture here. I'm going to try my absolute best to go into as detail as I just did, but I cannot believe that it did not work at all and that I had to delete that entire lecture I just recorded. So, anyway, here we go. All right, reset. We're going to do this. Here we go. Goals and objectives. So many of you have already been doing goals and objectives with your present level of performance. So finding out where they currently are to be able to start your instruction and figure out where your first objective for that skill is. For the formal assessment, if we were to do the TGMD3, you could then utilize that assessment to be able to build goals and objectives from. And all of you at the MDC have been doing ongoing data collection with short-term objectives with your assessment sheet that you've been turning in weekly at the Motor Development Clinic. So we're going to be talking about objectives a little bit differently than what we did in the MDC, because this is more so primarily based on an IEP, an individualized educational program specific to adaptive physical education and what's required in writing goals and objectives for that area. So you had some good practice with our assessment sheet, and now we're going to get into a little bit more detail about goals and objectives. So what is the purpose of goals and objectives? Like I said, this is primarily for the IEP. It's going to be first based upon assessment and observation. So what you're going to do is you're going to find out what is the present level of performance that individual or student is performing at in our area. And so in the field of adaptive physical education, really the purpose for the first assessment and observations is to figure out, do they qualify for adaptive physical education services? So you perform formal assessments like the TGMB3, some informal assessments, some observations of the student in physical education, maybe talk to the classroom teacher, the parents, and then from there, you build what's considered a PLAF, your present level of academic achievement and functional performance, also considered a baseline. So this is like a time stamp of how that student or participant is currently performing in their skills. Now, based upon their baseline or their present level of performance, you would then, in the real world for the IEP, determine whether or not, based upon where they're currently performing, do they qualify for adaptive physical education services or not. Now, if they do qualify for APE services, then you're going to be needing to write goals and objectives. So for the purpose of this assignment, you are only going to write a present level based upon one motor skill or one fitness skill. Then you're going to write a goal for that skill, and then 3 objectives. And your objectives are really stepping stones to get to that goal. All right, and the last one here is states the progress of the goal. So this is your progress monitoring. So essentially, you're going to have the IEP is going to be once a year, and so your goal is to be obtainable within that year. So the progress monitoring is usually done once every quarter or marking period, in which you give information on how well that student is progressing on your objectives and the goal. So you might need to figure out if the student needs more support, or if the goal is potentially too difficult or too easy, and just really letting the family and the parents and also the IEP team know where the progress is in obtaining those adapted PE goals. And so the progress monitoring will be done, usually about 4 times throughout the academic year, and provide updates on where the student is at obtaining that goal. So, present level of performance. What this does, it describes where the student is presently performing at that moment of time. So it's really like a time stamp. And we're going to continue to use those ABLE terms just like we did when we wrote up our present level performance at the MDC. So for this assignment, you're just going to really write a present level performance on one skill. That skill is going to be based upon the skill that you did your mature motor pattern and your mature video for. So you're going to write it as if the last week of MDC where your participant was performing that skill. So the present level performance, also called baseline, is what they're currently able to do. And therefore, from there, you then build the goal. And then from the goal, you break it down into 3 objectives. So for this example of the present level of academic achievement and functional performance, or baseline, I explain, student was able to pick up tennis ball and grasp it with their preferred hand. After a demonstration of throwing a tennis ball overhand was provided, the student stood with both feet shoulder width apart facing the target. The student brought their arm down and around and released a ball by their head, while their feet stayed stationary. After releasing the ball, the preferred arm stopped momentum and returned to the same side of the body. So, very positive, talking in ABLE terms, just explaining how they're able to perform an overhand throw. So after reading that, you can see that they're not performing that skill at a mature pattern. And therefore, there are some parts of the skill criteria of overhand throwing that they are missing. So here, we know they can pick up the ball and hold it with their preferred hand. They had really good preparation phase of being able to bring the arm down and around. However, they were standing facing the target instead of perpendicular or having trunk rotation when they threw. Their feet remained stationary, so there was no step in opposition. And then after they released the ball, they didn't have a follow through. Their arm just stopped and then returned to the side of the body. So from this, I can see, I know what the goal is going to look like. I know what the objectives are going to look like, because those are areas that the student currently is not performing. We're not going to put something in an objective if we already stated they can do it in their baseline or in their PLAF. So remember to try your best to use ABLE terms within, and then remember that the goal must relate to the PLAF or the baseline. The objectives are then going to relate to the goal. So almost like you're telling a story. So what type of goal should you write? Well, since many of you have been writing objectives for your assessment sheet for the MDC, you know that we've already talked a little bit about this. Many of you are writing based upon quality and process. So how is the individual or student actually performing this skill? What's their performance level? The goal is then to get them to perform the skill as at a mature pattern. So we're breaking down that motor skill into components. All All right, the other type of goal is a quantity or product type of goal. So this one really is focused more around skill manipulation or the product of the skill. So this would be, for instance, in this example, how many times they're able to throw the ball to hit the paper plate. So working on accuracy. So primarily, we want to really focus on quality and process to make sure that the individual is performing the skill at the most mature pattern possible for that individual before we really start working on the product of that motor skill. Because changing our focus to product at times can impact how we perform the skill and therefore can impact our motor learning. So many times we focus on quality and process first, have them performing in a mature pattern, and then start switching over to quantity and product. However, there is one area of skills that many times we will work more in the quantity and product field or area, and that is primarily fitness goals. Because in order to work on muscular strength, muscular endurance, cardiovascular endurance, we need to be performing a skill more than once. All right. So it's not that we don't care about the form of how they're performing it, but we need to have some quantity and product to make sure that we're increasing their endurance or their strength. So many of you that have fitness skills have been working on, yes, proper form in a plank position, but also switching over to quantity and product to make them hold that proper form of plank for 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Because if not, we're really not working on fitness. We're just working on that skill of a plank as far as quality and process. So that's really only one kind of area of skills would be fitness that we might work more in quantity and product. But once the individual is able to perform a skill in a mature pattern, then yes, we are switching over to quantity and product. All right, so goals. Goals need to be measurable and they need to be observable. So in our field, we observe motor skills through observation, okay? So our goals should not state student will learn, student will understand, because we're not giving them academic tests to be able to tell us if they can identify or understand the actual components. What we want them to do is to demonstrate it or that they're able to perform it. So the goals should also be obtainable through the short-term objectives to be able to lead to acquiring that goal. So the objectives must all link to the goal, and the goal links to the present level performance. So it's based off of that assessment and that baseline, and it should be realistic and attainable. So based upon the present level performance I read to you earlier, the goal for this student would be by the end of the semester, the student will be able to throw a tennis ball overhand using a mature pattern after a demonstration 80% of the time or 8 out of 10 trials over 2 sessions. So a few things to identify within this goal. One, there has to be this timetable, all right, end of a semester. Next is if we're using equipment, we need to be very specific about what equipment. When we throw a tennis ball, that looks much different than if we're throwing a beach ball. So again, very similar to your present level performance at the MDC, where the equipment is very specific. The other thing is that you need to have what condition, and this is after a demonstration. It could be independent, it could be with verbal cues. And then the last one is the mastery criteria. So for each of your goals and objectives, you need to have those components in it. And we'll talk a little bit more about those components and what they look like in objectives. All right, so this is what not to do. It should not look all over the place like this. All different skills, talking about different aspects of each skill, what they could, they couldn't do. All right, now in the real world, yes, you're going to write about multiple different skills and write about their strengths and their weaknesses and their areas of need. But For this assignment, we're just going to focus on that one skill and be very specific about writing what they are currently able to do on that one skill. All right, next part we're going into are the objectives. The objectives are short-term tasks that must be achieved in order to reach that annual goal. So we're going to write 3 objectives, and these objectives are skill criteria that they're not currently able to do, that then is not said that they're doing in the baseline or the PLAF. So if we go back to our example of what we had for our present level performance for overhand throwing, we're now going to write objective of those specific skill criteria that student was missing in their present level. So first objective here, by March 2020, after a demonstration, the student will be able to overhand throw a tennis ball by displaying proper trunk rotation 80% of the time. And again, you can see I'm keeping consistent with 80% of the time, keeping consistent with the equipment, the tennis ball, keeping consistent with the condition after a demonstration. And I am changing the date because I'm building on their skill. I should be showing progression of their skill, that they're going to obtain this, then in another month they'll obtain this, another month, and then by the end of the semester they obtain their goal. That's what I'm predicting that they're going to get. So objective 2, by April 2020, after a demonstration, the student will be able to overhand throw a tennis ball by stepping in opposition with non-preferred foot while throwing the ball 80% of the time. So if you think back to the present level of performance for the student that we wrote, right, the student was standing with 2 feet staying stationary. So we know that an objective is needed for them to actually show that step in opposition. And then the last objective, objective 3, is by May 2020, after a demonstration, student will be able to overhand throw a tennis ball with proper follow through by bringing their preferred hand down and across their body after releasing the ball 80% of the time. Because again, as stated in the present level, the student was just, throwing, stopping their arm, and then bringing it down to the same side of the body. So these are specific skill criteria, not based upon your teaching, not based upon your activities, based upon the skill itself, in order to get them to be able to perform a mature overhand throw skill. All right, so this is just to be able to remind you, this is how you've been teaching in the MDC, very systematically. We're not going to put the whole goal and try to teach all of it at one time. It's going to be overwhelming. So instead, we're going to take these steps. We're going to take these stepping stones, which are our objectives, to get the individual closer and closer to their goal. And so this is just a reminder of why it's important to have objectives and really work through those skill criteria that they're not currently able to do to be able to reach their goal. All right, so evaluating progress. Again, this is your progress monitoring. You do not have to do this for the assignment, but I want to provide you information on this. So we usually set our mastery criteria to 80% and higher. Why? Because 80% is really that B level. You really don't want to get down into 70% C, because then 30% of the time they're not performing it, right? So our lowest level we usually will go is 80%. And we usually never put 100% for our performance. Why? Because that's just not true. None of us perform a motor skill 100% of the time, all the time, in correct form. However, there is one exception to that. There are a few skills that we may put mastery criteria at 100%, and those are related usually to safety. So if you have a student who's riding a bike, I would want them to be able to utilize the brakes successfully 100% of the time, and not 80%, where 20% of the time they could get hurt, get injured because they're not using their brakes. And also in the field of aquatics, we see many times mastery criteria at 100%. Okay, so next is evaluation procedure. So how are we going to evaluate them on their motor objectives and goals? for our field, many times we do this through teacher observation, teacher checklist, or assessment. And then the last area is their progress. And what we've been using for mastery code is, the condition needed, independent, verbal cue, demonstration, partial manipulation, or full manipulation. So again, when you're doing your progress monitoring, you're going to be explaining where they are as far as the condition of support needed. And you can also then provide information on what level of mastery criteria are they on. Because if you're going to state that they have not obtained an objective, then you're probably going to want to state around what level of mastery criteria are they at. Maybe they're at 50% of the time they're performing that skill criteria. So again, this is just to give you some input about progress monitoring. You are not having to do this for your assignment, but I did want to provide you information on it, especially because all of you have been doing progress monitoring on the assessment sheets in the MDC. All right. So SMART goals. This is used a lot to really double check your writing of goals and objectives. So you can pause the video and read through each of these, or when you're writing your goals and objectives, you can go back and pull up this slide and this part of the video and just double check yourself. So SMART goals means that the goal is specific, is measurable, it's attainable, it's realistic based upon the time frame that you have, and is timely, meaning that you're providing in that timetable to obtain each of those objectives and the goal. Okay, so it's time to practice. I want to show you a resource that's posted on Blackboard related to goals and objectives. And then I also want to show you the template that I want you to use for your goals and objective assignment, which is also on Blackboard. So for this assignment, you're going to provide present level performance of one motor skill of your MDC participant based upon how they ended clinic performing that skill. You're then going to write one goal and then 3 objectives leading to that goal. So remember, goals and objectives should have all of the following very consistent information. It should not change. It should be the same. Condition. Are they doing it independently after a demonstration with verbal cues? Are they performing this skill with a partner? What is the specific equipment that you're using? If you're using equipment, be very specific with what that equipment is. Don't just write ball. Tell me what type of ball. And then what is that mastery criteria? You can either state 80% of the time or 8 out of 10 trials across 2 or 3 sessions. So for your goals and objectives assignment, again, a reminder, this is based off of the motor skill that you taped for your motor skill pattern video and that you did your motor pattern on. And this is based on your MDC participants' performance. So you're going to think back to the last time you saw them or taught them, and you're going to give me that blurb of what their present level performance is. The template that you're going to use is on Blackboard for this assignment. I'm going to walk you through it. And this assignment is due April 16th. Okay. So this is the resource that's on Blackboard. So it talks about components of a high quality present level academic achievement and functional performance. So the PLAF, and you can see we fall under functional performance of the PLAF with gross motor. So that's where all our information is going to be related to. The document then talks about, well, for present level, where do you get your sources of information from? We're going to be getting it from formal assessments like the TGMD3, informal assessments like teacher-created assessment, teacher-created objectives, checklists, maybe progress from previous goals, maybe input from teachers or parents. So all that information is going to be part of your baseline. For us, it's really going to be based upon our teacher observation that we received or that we saw. Then it has a present level checklist. So again, you don't need to go this in depth. This is just a resource for you. So when writing your present level, you're going to be thinking about their strengths, their interests, their preferences, any concerns that the. All right, another take two, because for some reason sound cut off again. All right, back to the resource document. So here, input from parents. Then we can go down the present levels of functional performance. And again, these are all just specific questions that ask you about the student's strengths, needs, impact areas. This is just a great resource for those of you when you get out into the field. You do not need to cover all or any of these questions, but just so you have an understanding of what a real professional present level would look like for those IEP documents. Is definitely a lot more involved than what we're doing, but we're still stepping up our game from the objectives we wrote on the assessment sheets. It talks about language use and organization, and then tone, which is what we're going to be doing, is this positive manner, really that able to term should be used within the present level or baseline. It then provides you a template for writing your present level, and then it goes into goal writing. So again, using that SMART acronym to make sure goals are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time specific. So these just provide you some additional questions to think about as you write your goal. We don't cover all of them, but it is just a really good resource for you when writing your goal. And I love this in the bottom. This is just one way to develop a goal, because once you get out there in the real world, you will learn that your district will have specific policies and procedures in place on what they want for your goals and objectives. And really everyone writes them slightly different. And so what I'm going to be teaching you, what I taught you today, may be tweaked and a little bit different based upon your district that you may work at. So now what I'm going to pull up is our template for this assignment. And you can download this from Blackboard. And this is what you're going to complete for the assignment. So you're going to put the student name. So write in your MDC participant name. Date of birth, if you don't know it, go ahead and just make up a date of birth. That's totally fine. Same thing with IEP date. Go ahead and just put a date there. Now, for area need, we are in the functional performance area of the PLAF, and our area is gross motor and APE. So this is what you're going to write here. And then here is the baseline and PLAF. So this is, remember, just writing on that one motor skill or fitness skill, and you're going to tell me what the student is currently able to do in able terms. And this is based upon the last time that you taught them in the MDC. You're going to write here about what they're able to do for that. Then you're going to have your measurable annual goal, number 1. And then this is where you're going to write your goal. So remember, you should have a timeline in place. You're going to write student will be able to, actually spell it out. Don't use my acronym here. You're going to state exactly what skill, what the mastery criteria is, the condition, are they doing it independently, after a demonstration, with verbal cues, and then what specific equipment, if any, is needed for the goal. So if in their baseline or their PLAF, they are not performing the skill at a mature level, then your goal should be a qualitative goal. If they're super close or are performing the skill at a mature level, you can then write your goal and objectives based upon quantity or product, but only if their baseline is at a mature level. Then after you write your goal, you're going to write your 3 objectives. They're down here. And you're going to have very consistent language to your goal. So you really can copy and paste your goal and then just change the skill to the actual skill criteria that they're not currently able to do based upon what you stated in your baseline or PLAF. And you're going to write each of these objectives very much like the same. And then this down below, this is just for the progress monitoring. All of this is going to be blank. You do not need to write anything here whatsoever. I just want to be able to show you what this template looks like. So what you are going to do is the information at the top, area of need. You're going to copy this information and put it in yours. You're going to tell me their baseline or present level. You're going to write one goal for that skill and then 3 objectives. And then you're going to save this document and then upload it to Blackboard, and you will have completed your goals and objective assignment. All right. Whew. We got that recorded. That was not very streamlined and as great as I wanted that lecture to be. I do apologize. Even my second round of recording it kept cutting me off about every 5 minutes or so. So, little rough there with using our online technology to get the lecture to you, but the content is there. Remember that your assignment isn't due for a few weeks, and we have spring break next week, so we won't be meeting. No office hours, no lecture next week. Please make sure all of you stay safe and healthy. For spring break, I'm sure probably many of you are staying home like I am for spring break. But if you have questions about this assignment, as always, feel free to email me or to get on my office hours and ask me those questions. I am super excited to be able to see your video home programs of all of your skills that should be submitted by 11:59 tonight on Blackboard. And feel free to use this video, pause it, go back. Goals and objectives is not an easy thing to write, so make sure you double check yourself on all of the content before submitting it to Blackboard. All right, stay safe, stay healthy. I miss all of you. I would definitely rather be seeing you in class and lecturing face-to-face than on this online platform that continues to fail me. But we'll get through this together. Let's stay positive and keep moving forward. Have a great next week on spring break, and then I will touch base with you the following week. Thank you.